I could just be paranoid writing this before going out to the cabin. My ex-boyfriend bought me a book on bear attacks. I think the title was just Grisly Ends. I don't think he intentionally wanted to scare me with it. Don't think he even knew about the trip. If anyone, it's my fault for actually reading it. The first few chapters covered incidents where a young bear was taken from the wilderness and treated as a pet. It was only when the bears got older when they turned on their owners who, in many cases, saw it like their own child. As the title suggests, each scenario described the eventual attack in grisly detail. The puncturing of eyes, tearing of face, bloody maulings. The book never shied from delivering every detail. The end of each chapter emphasized the strength of bears and warned not to underestimate them. Now I'm alone in the dark, terrified to make a sound or even breathe too loudly. Outside it's cloudy tonight, so all the stars are hidden. It's mostly quiet. I can hear the whining wind against the old log walls, but that's all. Naturally, I know it's partly the book that has me so on edge. That being said, input from anyone willing to help will be appreciated. I don't think I'm completely imagining the scraping in the walls. To start off, I guess I should introduce myself and my siblings. My sisters are Edith, 15, and Joelyn, 20. I'm the oldest, 23. My name's Beatrice. The three of us are staying in my uncle's cabin. He was kind enough to let us stay here over the weekend. The GPS stopped working on the way over here. The cabin's isolated, about a half-hour drive away from Kamloops, a city in BC, Canada, so none of us had any service. Luckily, we still had a rough idea of where it was located. Both Joelyn and I remembered visiting it with the family. Edith had been too young to remember. It was Joelyn who spotted it first. There, she said, pointing. I turned down onto the gravel road and gripped the steering wheel a bit more tightly. Vibrations rattled the truck as I continued on and made the final turn up to the large cabin. The only other man-made structure I could see was another building about 30 yards from the cabin. Its white walls were stained with grime. It looked almost like a chapel with a slanted brown roof. At the tallest point was a single window, glowing with yellow light. I only mention it because of the nagging suspicion I had of being watched as I looked up at it through the windshield. The smell of cedar was almost claustrophobic as I stepped out of the truck. I remembered the area being more open. I noticed Joanne wrinkle her nose as she took a few tentative steps towards our cabin. Tall brush and grasses made the walkway cramped up to the doorway. "Whoa, yeah, I don't remember any of this," Edith said, lowering her phone. She pushed her way out from under the mountain of blankets piled in the blank seat and stepped down onto the gravel path. "They do have Wi-Fi here, right?" "We'll have to see," I said, "but let's get all our stuff inside first." That didn't last long. After the first few bags had been brought in, I found myself on my own bringing in the rest of the stuff. Edith wanted to explore the house, and she dragged Joelyn along with her. I heard them giggling down in the basement as I continued making trips to and from the truck. I guess I didn't really mind. It was nice to hear them having a good time, especially Edith. That being said, I was exhausted by the time the truck was empty. I packed a lot of food for this trip. We're just staying 5 days Friday today, but I'd brought extra snacks. Luckily, the kitchen had a refrigerator which seemed to be working fine. My eyes widened in alarm just as I set the cooler down on the counter. There were rat droppings everywhere all along the milky gray surface. Should have expected it, I thought. The house has been empty for over a year now. I wiped it off the counter using a Kleenex and threw it in the bin. With everything put away, I could finally explore the cabin. To the left of the front entrance was an elaborate fireplace of red brick. A ring of stone floor was around it, and an axe was leaning against a heap of dusty wood. I immediately noticed the hunting gear seemingly everywhere. There is a gun in the kitchen. Many deer antlers had been hung up along the walls. There were also pelts lying like mats over the floorboards. I felt my heart beat faster as I noticed a bear skin at the base of the stairs. Its head was still intact, staring towards the door with an open maw. Its claws were still gleaming like black razors on each paw. "Aren't we going to have something for dinner?" Edith asked, rounding the corner. I'll admit, I jumped at her sudden appearance. "I thought what we had on the drive would be enough," I told her. She scowled, trotting across the bare skin to go upstairs. It might sound silly, but I stepped around it, jumping over the back edge to get to the steps. I looked over my shoulder as I went up. Something about that bear just really creeped me out. Skinned animals in general have always unsettled me. I can't look at them without imagining the process of it being peeled off skin and muscle. It's a gruesome image in my head. Not sure if sharing pictures work here, but I drew a map of the cabin. It might be helpful later on in the story. Ground floor teps:/a/a/26GD6BJ. Upstairs teps:/imgur.com/a//rsdef. There are 2 rooms in the cabin, each with a single bed. They were too small for the 3 of us, so I ended up on my own. I'll fast forward a bit to when it was dark out. My sisters both went to their room for the night. The sounds of them giggling fluttered sporadically. I packed a white night dress for tonight. It's covered in a pattern of vibrant strawberries. After getting changed, I ended up staying up late reading, long after the voices in the other room went quiet. A few more chapters of the same book one mentioned. It's sitting next to my knee now. The cover's pretty horrifying, especially since the scratching at the door has gone quiet. Alone with just my thoughts. It's a glossy cover with teeth that stick out a bit from the surface. Its mouth is wide open, nose pointing straight up with the white of its eyes showing. There's something in its mouth, though I couldn't tell you what it's supposed to be. Maybe a salmon, or a part of some other animal. I needed to go downstairs to take off my makeup. That's when it all really happened. I guess part of the reason I waited so long was because I was already feeling nervous. Putting it off definitely didn't help. I have only myself to blame. Anyway, I was a bit at ease hearing Jolene snoring as I stepped out into the hall. Our family has always joked about how loud she can get. Sounds like a gas lawnmower trying to start. I don't know how Edith managed to sleep with it. I'd gladly trade places. Maybe she can be the one with her own room tomorrow night. I crept past their room and down the stairs, heart pumping rapidly in my chest. I kept telling myself it was all right, that it was just me awake. I held my wrist in my hand as I went, tightening my grip at every little sound. I remember the feeling of the smooth floor against my sock as I stepped down the last step. I felt like I was hyper alert at that moment, aware of everything around me. Sitting here now, I feel so stupid. Inching my way past the fireplace, I turned down the hallway and into the bathroom. It was a long hallway. Halfway down, I heard a sound, a grinding noise behind me like a baseball rolling over cement. I ran the final steps and sighed with relief as I closed the door behind me. Rats in the walls, I told myself, spotting the mousetrap behind the toilet. Guess my uncle already knows about it. I washed my face with cold water, taking off my makeup. There was a small cubby there where the 3 of us stashed our makeup bags. Me and Joanne, at least. I think Edith forgot hers. I noticed a few of my wipes had already been used. Leaving the bathroom, everything was fine. When I got to the stairs, that's when it hit me. 1 foot on the carpeted stair, the other on the smooth wooden floor. Wasn't there bare skin here? I braced my arm against the wall, heart beating ever faster. I felt dizzy, almost like I'd pass out. What explanation was there? Could something be in the house? Back home, our family had an orange cat named Kiki. I always recognized the sound of her running up the stairs, the thud of the front legs followed by the back as she bounded upwards. The sound charging up from the basement then was similar, only I could hear it was a much larger animal. My body reacted as my mind registered the approach. I ran like a scared deer. Up the stairs I went, clenching the banister to pull myself to the summit. The galloping claws were behind me. They paused for a moment when I started. I'm sure it hadn't noticed me at first, or else now I'd be in its grasp. I could feel how large it was as it followed behind, bumping the walls with its weight. I made it to my room and slammed the door, pulling the lock in place in a fluid motion. The thing must have been a hair behind. Its weight slammed the door, and I was nearly certain it would break. I could just stand there petrified, listening to the bending of the door's wooden planks. I backed up with my arm behind, finding the rim of my bed and slumping down onto it. I can only guess what the intruder was. If it was a bear in the house, I don't know if anyone's seen the videos online of them climbing trees. They can bound up in an instant or jump from one and scale up another. It's terrifying how fast they are. That combined with the stories from this book. For a half hour after I heard its scraping claws, the scratching continued along the wall next. There was a crack, then the sound changed, closer as if a paw had found its way between the panels. It was breaking through. But then it was just silent. The final sound still has me terrified. I never would have answered. I know it wasn't him. I swear I heard a voice. It knew my name. Beatrice, it called to me. The sound coming from where the scratching had ceased. And it was my uncle's voice, a bit gruff with an air of impatience. Whatever it was, it only said my name once. It's been quiet since then. It's possible I imagined being chased, but the scratching on the door felt very real. I don't think it was my uncle. I can't sleep. Service here is spotty, but I'll be reading any responses this gets. Thank you. I woke up to the voices of my sisters downstairs. Barely slept at all last night, so I'm exhausted. Couldn't help yawning as I got out of bed and wandered to my door. I was startled fully awake as sharp thorns stabbed through my sock. I yelped, loud enough that I guess they heard me downstairs. Beatrice Jolin called. "We have breakfast for you." Just a minute, the floor outside my room was covered in wood chips. It still felt a bit uncomfortable to walk after that, even after I had pulled out a few of the larger splinters. To be honest, without finding them, I would have chalked the events of last night up to a dream. Part of me had tried to believe last night was a nightmare. There's also a loose panel in the wall, large enough for a hand to squeeze between. It's definitely the same area where the scraping came from yesterday. My sisters didn't notice the chips, or that the door was covered in claw marks. I guess the cabin is already scuffed in a lot of areas throughout. They were in a good mood when I went downstairs. Jolyn already had a stack of pancakes waiting. She had made some with chocolate chips inside, and I found Edith hadn't hesitated to get into the whipped cream. As I walked into the kitchen, my heart froze. On the banister by the basement stairs was the bear pelt. The shock must have shown on my face. "What's wrong now?" Edith asked. "We heard you shout upstairs." "The bear." "Ah, what about it?" "It was there yesterday." I gestured over my shoulder. "Don't you remember?" "Oh yeah," said Edith after a pause. "I guess strange." She turned away from me to shove another forkful of pancakes in her mouth. "Is something bothering you?" Bae Jolene asked, moving over to sit by Edith. It wouldn't have been easy to explain all of what I experienced last night to my sisters. I did tell them I thought there had been an animal in the house. Edith snorted, then suggested it was just rats scraping around in the walls. To be fair, I noticed more rat droppings over the counters. I didn't notice the sign yesterday. I spotted it above the sink while washing dishes. It read, "Countless people have eaten in this kitchen and gone on to live." teps:/imgur.com/a/9ruo 6q might be a random detail, but I thought it was too strange not to mention. Ominous, I noted, pointing it out to Joellen. "Yeah," she agreed with a laugh. "A bit strange, isn't it? It isn't only the bear skin in the cabin. There are other animals, a wild boar and a fawn. I noted their locations after I'd finished the cleaning. The fawn wasn't where I remembered. Last night it was upstairs, hanging on the wall above the stairs. This morning, however, it was on the kitchen floor underneath Edith's chair. I'm not certain if the boar moved. It was in the hall towards the bathroom and gave me a bit of a fright when I went to brush my teeth after breakfast. I know what some of you may be thinking. There's obviously something strange going on with these pelts. Why don't I move them? Lock them in a room somewhere? While I've thought about it, I don't think I have the courage to touch the bear. It also might be difficult to explain to my sisters if I asked them for help. If I told them I thought the carpets were coming to life, I don't think I'd be taken seriously. I tried uploading this to Reddit, but I don't have any connection right now. I've thought about it a bit more. I'll try moving the fawn to the bathroom without raising suspicions. I haven't explored the basement yet, but I know Edith and Jolene were down there yesterday. I think they want me to go with them. It should be fine as a group. Guess I'll have to see how it goes. Thank you for reading my story. Beatrice. Just ____. Edit, it's the middle of the night now. Instead of making a whole new post, I thought it'd be better to add on to the previous. I visited the basement. Jolene agreed the choice of blue carpet was strange due to the smell of mold water damaged. The moisture was enough to get my feet wet. We were wearing shoes yesterday, Jolene told me as I peered towards the shadows. I didn't realize how bad it was then. There was a weary buzz above. Little taps sounded sporadically as the insects struck the side of the light bulb. The rooms down there aren't entirely finished. Some of the floor was still completely dirt, and every other wall is a wooden framework. The only furniture was a leather couch facing an unplugged television. The three of us sat down on the couch. I sat with my legs crossed so my feet wouldn't touch the floor. My sisters talked for a while, every so often exploding into a fit of giggles. I even joined in a few times. Have you checked out any of the other rooms? I asked after some time had passed. My sister shared a glance, kind of dark, Jolene said. So not really. No. Would you want to look for us? Edith asked with a grin. I shook my head quickly. What if we all go together? She persisted, smiling devilishly. Could be an adventure. I looked towards the exit behind me. 3 creaky boards led to the door, then the flight of stairs back into the kitchen. If we're as a group, sure, I guess. Jolene began. We don't have to. Great. Edith grabbed her arm and dragged her towards the triad of unfinished rooms. I followed behind, arms crossed. She was begging to look yesterday, Jolene told me. I told her no. There were shovels and other equipment. It smelled like garbage. There were piles of it in heaps. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed a pit dug out in one of the rooms. I wonder what that's for, I said. Not sure, Jolene answered. Some utility for the house. Maybe plumbing. Edith walked past us further into the shadow. There's something white down there, she said. Can either of you see? It was then the light at the door went out. The 3 of us went silent. Who's walking? Edith said after a pause. I hear someone moving. My hand found Jolene's wrist. She was motionless at my side. I could hear it too now. I could feel the dust resettle after each firm, heavy step down the steps from the kitchen. Down, I hissed. Get down. I dragged Jolene with me into the room where Edith had been standing. When I felt the rim of the pit, I dropped to my knees. Stay quiet. I was sure Edith was about to say something, about to ask a question, but it was another voice that spoke. I thought his voice would work to lure her. He sounded frustrated, angry even. My mind raced. Does he know we're here? Is it dark out? How long have we really been down here? You thought she'd just come walking out. A second voice this time. After you chased her, the first grunted as the pair came to a halt. She was the oldest. The second voice carried on. Just remember, it's better when they're younger. The other 2 will be better for us anyway. The oldest is a backup, otherwise she'll work as feed. This last comment prompted a deep rumbling chuckle. Let's unlock the trapdoor and get out of here, he said. Whatever he was. I could only make out the dark shape of where he stood. He was so large, I'm not even sure how he fit through the door frame. I could feel my sister's breathing on my arm. I guess she was having trouble sitting motionless on her knees. I could have helped her if I'd reacted quicker. I sensed how tired she was getting, but I was scared to move. It was at that moment her position slipped. There was a tumble of soil as her legs slipped out from under her, down into the pit behind us. I grabbed her arm, catching myself from breathing too loudly. Rats, the second stranger scoffed. Let's get out of here. There was a creak. My brain recognized it as a metal hinge opening. In agonizing silence, we waited as the pair descended somewhere deeper under the cabin. There was a thud behind them. My eyes were adjusting better to the darkness. I could see my sister's face. Her blue eyes appeared gray in the darkness. It looked like she was screaming. though no sound escaped her thin lips. "It." My leg, she gasped for breath as a whine finally escaped her. "Joe," I grabbed her arm and tugged. "Last night was terrifying enough. All alone in the dark. I can't even begin to describe what I felt in that moment, though, wanting desperately to save her. It wasn't just me, though. Edith leapt to my side and grabbed Jolene, helping drag her up. I thought she must be caught on something. She barely moved. Out of desperation, I lowered my own leg into the pit and kicked down hard, thinking to knock whatever was holding her. Instead, I heard a squeal. My foot hit something fleshy that leered away from my attack. My sister's leg slid against me as she came out. It was wet with something black and warm. There's no way in hell we were staying in the basement after that. The strangers' voices had long gone silent. Supporting my sister's arm, we made it to the kitchen stairs and crept up. The bathroom had a lock, I remembered. I intended to take her there, not the rooms upstairs. As we approached the hallway to the bathroom, though, I heard a wet snort. I froze in place. "What is it?" Edith asked with a tremble in her voice. "The boar." What?" "Upstairs," I whispered back. "Please just listen, please, upstairs." Going through the living room also meant going past the fireplace where the axe was located. I grabbed the handle with my free hand and clutched it tightly. Feet were stomping down the hall towards us. From upstairs, I heard a growl as something approached the stairwell. I recognized the thud against the wall as it clambered down the first step. Whatever had chased me the night previous. It's over, I thought. We're trapped. I thought I could see a nose in the darkness. We were facing towards the bathroom at this point, my head turning back and forth between the two approaching beasts. A wrinkled snout from around the corner of that hall, a wet breath. My heart was pounding as I strained my vision, wondering if the gleaming white I saw was tusks. The boar turned as the sound of thrashing exploded from the bathroom, as if something was banging around violently. It disappeared, squealing as it bounded towards the bathroom door. From behind us, the other creature bounded downwards. I pushed my sisters back into the shadow of the fireplace as the thing bounded past. It had an odor, a rot that pierced my nostrils. Edith gauged audibly, but it was already long past, around the corner, and on its way to the bathroom. We used our opportunity to move around the fireplace, up the stairs into my room. Yes, I managed to move the fawn pelt to the bathroom. There's no doubt in my mind now that these dead creatures are roaming the house at night. Are they mimicking human voices? Or are there people getting in the house somehow? I don't plan to stick around to find out. This might be the last post. After the events I just experienced, I plan to pack up and leave tomorrow morning. Edith and Jolene are going to be pissed, but I think I'm beyond the point of that really mattering. We aren't safe here. My room is locked, so I don't think they can get me. I should last until morning. I'd appreciate any help. Good night. The neighbor I mentioned in my first post. The house next door with the glowing window. Yeah, he's had access to our cabin this entire time. I only found out this morning. The three of us all slept in the same room last night, huddled on the floor. The air was chilly in the room. Jolene was shivering uncontrollably. I could feel the goosebumps all down her arms as I held her, even with a blanket. Nothing disturbed us, except the relentless wind of the night. Maybe the prayer I whispered helped. This morning I woke up feeling stiff. As I sat up, I could feel an indent across my upper back where I had been resting against the wooden bed frame. I itched it with my hand, looking down at Jolene hugging my legs. Don't even bother packing everything out of the kitchen. I told myself, just get in the truck, and then we're out of here. Where's Edith? My muscles groaned as I reached over my shoulder for a pillow on the bed. Reaching under Jolene's head, I lifted it, then replaced my legs with the pillow. She mumbled to herself, clutching the edge tightly. I tucked her blonde hair back out of her face and petted her head before standing. Maybe Edith had moved somewhere around the other side of the bed. At least that's what I had hoped. My heart began to beat more quickly as other possibilities flooded my mind. Where could she be? I heard someone speaking downstairs. It was my sister's voice. Upon hearing her, I rushed out of the room, avoiding the hazardous wood chips still scattered, and halted at the stairwell. There was Edith down at the bottom. She was facing away from me. She was nodding as another, deeper voice spoke. "Edith," I called her in alarm. "Who are you talking to?" I must have looked like a mess standing there, all covered in dust, hair sticking up in odd angles. Edith's tired eyes widened when she turned to look at me. "Teach ... This is Azrael," she told me. "He's the one who's been putting out the mouse traps." I stumbled down, grabbing my sister's shoulder as I faced Azrael. He was a young man, around my age, dressed completely in black. He had a bit of facial hair, enough that his greasy blonde mustache had begun to curl. "How did you get in?" I demanded, looking him up and down. He smirked, pulling a key from his shirt pocket. "The old man let me know you were coming. I come in every so often to check in on the place, make sure everything's all right during your stay." "Pretty normal to have something like that," said Edith behind me, "especially a place that's been so long empty." I was telling him we heard people walking around last night. It must have been the cleaners. "My uncle didn't tell me," I said. "Maybe you could have knocked or something. Let us know you were coming in." "Are you sure you're getting enough sleep?" asked Azrael, still grinning as he ignored me. His almond eyes seemed to be laughing as they peered into me. I didn't answer. He smiled all the way to the front entrance as the floorboards groaned under his boots. He pulled the heavy door open, and I followed him out onto the deck. He marched off, pushing a yellow wheelbarrow towards the neighboring house. "Get your stuff together, Edith," I told her. "We're leaving." Why she followed me as stepped down the rickety walkway to the gravel. This explains what we heard last night. It was nothing. I spun towards her. "Did you not see? Remember last night? The voices, what they said. What do you think that thing was that ran past? You must have smelled it." She paused at that last point, thinking it over. "You already had us so scared," she said. "I'm sure it was just the cleaners moving around. You were nervous before we even got here. I know you're still just upset about George. You got us all scared, so that's why we saw things." "Seriously?" I asked in disbelief. "You think I'm making up all this?" I shook my head at her as I continued towards the truck. It was where I had left it, green paint glistening under the light of early morning. I noticed it was leaning forward oddly. With a frown, I approached the hood. The front tires had been slashed. I noticed the marks instantly, thick tears horizontal across each surface. The holes were clean, clearly done with a tool. "Damn it," I cursed under my breath. It was a confirmation of my suspicions. It's not just animals we need to worry about. Edith either didn't notice or wasn't concerned. "I'm gonna go in and put my makeup on," she said in a voice that sounded almost bored. I thought I'd be past the point of having to convince her. After what the three of us went through, I didn't even know what to say to my sister. I love Edith, but I don't know how there could be any doubts that something was very wrong. I still don't understand. "Fine," I just said. "I think I'm out of wipes though if you're still using my bag. Maybe ask Joellen before you take hers." "What are you on about?" Edith scowled. "I brought my own purse, keeping it upstairs with me." Then I felt myself growing pale. Azrael was right. She tilted her head to one side. "You look like you really could use some sleep." She headed back to the cabin as I just stood there helplessly. Edith slammed the door on the way in. I winced, eyes darting across to the neighbors. It might have been just an animal, but something ducked into the bushes as I looked over. It was watching me. I ran into the cabin, climbing the stairs 2 at a time. I headed towards my room. Joellen was awake by now, sitting cross-legged on the bed. As I barged through the doorway, she looked up, alert, her right hand drifting to the axe which lay on the far corner of the bed. "Oh," she sighed with relief, clenching a hand to her heart. "Sorry," I gasped. Walking over, I went and sat down beside her. I noticed she pulled her left leg closer when I got closer. "Your leg was caught in something yesterday in the pit." I nodded towards it. "Are you all right?" "Yeah." "Can I see it?" "I see it." I guess yeah. Sometime in the night she had wrapped in fabric one of her shirts, pink with white buttons. She was hesitant to reveal it fully. You were bleeding, I asked, touching it gently. What do you think it was clamping down on it? I don't think it's bleeding now, she answered slowly. So if you want me, you could take a look at it. I couldn't see it well in the dark. All right, my fingers loosened the knot and gave it a soft tug. The edges of the fabric were bloody. I could feel it on my skin as the shirt unraveled. The first mark I found was a circular indent. Jolene looked away as I pressed my finger just beneath the wound. It doesn't look deep, I thought. Even still, a patch of dry blood was plastered over her short blonde hair. I held my breath as the rest was revealed. A horseshoe of circular bloody indents, one set on the front of her thigh and a second down the back. It was clearly a bite mark. We exchanged a glance. The bite looked human. I knew we were both thinking it. I was thankful the bleeding had stopped. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her in a tight embrace. I'm so sorry. I never would have driven us here. It's not your fault. Edith still doesn't see anything wrong, I said, breathing in and out deeply as I struggled to calm the drum of my heart. She must, after what we saw last night. Jolene lowered her head onto my shoulder. She's just putting on a brave face. Maybe. She's been acting kind of strange, I think. Something's alive down there. Her eyes looked frantic then. Whatever bit me. We aren't safe here. What are we still doing here? They slashed my tires. What, her hand gripped me tighter. It looked pretty bad. I don't think I can get us out of here. I was gonna try texting Uncle Stan. That's still an 8-hour drive for him. What are we supposed to do until then? The axe, give it to me. What? I grabbed the hilt, taking it from her. You're staying in here. Lock the door until I get back. Don't leave me. She grabbed hold of my shoulder tightly. What are you planning? We need to protect ourselves before darkfall. Until Uncle Stan can get to us. I don't know how long before he'll even get my message. I don't think the pelts can move during the day. I'm going to get Edith to help me move them. Then I'm going to secure the doors. I guess that makes sense. Her grip on me loosened. Just be careful, Oak. I'm going to be back soon. Promise. I intentionally failed to mention that I was heading to the basement first. I needed answers. Needed to know what that thing was. Whatever had hurt my sister, I would make it bleed. My knuckles were white on the hilt as I made my way through the house. Everything was quiet. Shouldn't that have been a comfort? Every step felt like wandering through a crowded stadium of hungry eyes, walls that knew my name. Down into the basement I headed towards the pit, growing ever more tense. As before, the light of the room only lasted so far. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, fumbling with one hand to open the flashlight. The stains on the pale wall were illuminated. Tilting it down, I saw something flash white inside the hole. My thumb swiped to my camera and took a picture. Nothing. I cursed when I saw it. Just an empty pit in the dirt, a piece of flat plywood at the bottom. I had taken a live photo, meaning the camera had recorded a few frames I could choose from. Taping edit, I scrolled back. The glint of white came into focus. I could see it, the thing that bit my sister's leg. Here's a screenshot of what I found. teps:/imgur.com/a/3 Ike. If you can't see, at the bottom of the pit is a small hole. Under it was a mouth of teeth. I slammed the axe into the ground. The blade sliced right through and I heard a gurgling shriek. I pulled the axe free and watched the spurt of blood over the floor. Without hesitation, I slashed again. The thin board was already collapsing in on itself as I jumped down. I felt an adrenaline rushing through me I can't describe. I was angry, to the point that the fear that I had felt almost consuming me dissipate. A mouth lunged up through the ground, then a second, then third, then fourth. The ground was alive, splitting and cracking like dry paint, a fleshy mound. Something bit down on the tip of my shoe. I kicked in its teeth, cutting its face wildly with my axe. The sound of popping of flesh and pus erupted. I was almost tripping in gore as the thing undulated beneath me. Fleshy growth grabbed up like living mud, tangling itself in my legs. The blade sliced through it before it could scrape higher than my thighs. I think I killed it. I don't know what it was, but it stopped moving. An ooze with many mouths, eyes and limbs. It's not hurting my sister ever again. I wanted to do a quick recap of all the facts I know so far. I know animals are rising from death and wandering our cabin at night. I know there's something wrong with the neighbors, now that there's nothing stopping them from getting inside. Hiding in a closet while we sleep, I killed something in the basement. Something with a human mouth that bit my sister's leg. I'm worried most about her. I still have to do the rest. Move the pelts, barricade the doors. After, I think I'm going to take Edith's advice. I'm going to bed early tonight, but I don't know how well I'll sleep. Sorry this one took a little longer to upload. Once again, connection isn't great. For my own sanity, I needed to make another update. Jolene and I have barricaded the room as best we can. We blocked the window but left a small gap. It's wide enough that we can still see the yard. I'm sitting at the desk right now, which is bracing the door. It's made from a heavy ebony wood that feels grainy to touch. My arms hurt badly. I'll explain why later on, so Jolene did most of the work sliding it across the floor. The door is also locked, so I think anyone would have difficulty getting in that way. The people are actively trying to kill us now. That much I know. They're not even bothering to wait for the cover of darkness at this point. I must have pissed them off by killing their pet in the basement yesterday. My uncle never responded to the text I sent for help. With the truck out of commission, he's my only hope of getting out of here. I'm constantly on edge. I don't think I could sleep if I tried. I hate having to rely on someone so far away to save us. I don't think I can get us out of here on my own. The date on my phone says it's Monday. I'm so tired it feels like we've been here longer than that. If things had gone to plan, we'd be leaving tomorrow. Edith was right. I miss him. If we were still together, maybe this trip wouldn't have even happened. I should start off where I left the previous post. The dripping sound from my axe was like a metronome as I climbed the basement stairs. The blood had soaked up to my wrists and decorated the crevices of my skin. I was sick to my stomach. My concentration just on getting to the kitchen sink. I braced myself against it, under that cursed sign, and watched the clear water dilute with gore. Despite it all, I was feeling somewhat more in control of our situation. That thing in the basement was gone. One less thing for the three of us to worry about. After washing myself and the blade, I sat down on the stool for a moment to catch my breath. The place smelled of rats. That should be the least of my worries, I realized, to the point that it seems almost funny to mention. It was then that I made the text to my Uncle Stan. I was as truthful as I could, while leaving out enough that I hoped he would actually take the situation seriously. I emphasized that my truck wasn't going anywhere, and we needed him to come get us as soon as possible. It was also then that I uploaded the previous post to Reddit. I decided to look for Edith. I had honestly expected her to be in the kitchen, helping herself to more of yesterday's pancakes. I remembered the last time I talked to her, she had wanted to put on her makeup. The logical place to look then was the bathroom at the end of the hall. I headed towards the door, double-checking to make sure it was locked, not that it would have done us much good after the morning's discovery. My plan was to barricade all the entrances before any of us slept. I had hoped Edith would help me with that. Heading through the common room, I glanced down at the axe in my hand. I reasoned it might be best to lean it against the couch for a minute as I went to check the bathroom. Sort of an odd thing to go up and greet my sister with an axe. Turning down the corner, I noticed both the wild pig and the bear pelts in the hall. They were looking towards the bathroom. I instantly regretted my choice of leaving the axe in the other room, not for the last time. I repeated the theory I had created in my head over to comfort myself, that the animals could only move at night. There was an eerie feeling in the air as I continued. Even the patterning of mice was quiet this time. I gradually became aware of a gnawing sound. If you've ever bit into a hard apple, you know what I heard. Only it was more damp, with a frequent cracking mixed in. Curiosity led me to push the door open, though I did so cautiously. I saw the fawn's face first as the hinges turned. Its eyes were a milky white with gray streaks along the edges. It was being lurched back and forth violently as the wet squelching sound continued. Edith was crouched on the toilet seat like an animal, balancing on the tips of her toes. All down her chest was blood. It was pooled around her feet and dribbled down the toilet bowl. The limp fawn lay across my sister's lap. She was gorging herself on it, chewing on its flesh with her little white teeth. Edith, I gasped. Her eyes looked insane as they flashed towards me. They were similar to the deer's, however, her black pupils were still present. They were bulging, though. She made no sound as the fawn dropped from her grasp. My eyes flashed to her long fingers gripping the edge of the seat. She looked like she was getting ready to pounce. I grabbed the door handle and tried to pull it shut, but she was quick. My sister lunged like a wildcat. Her fingers caught around my arm in a steel grip. "Edith, please," I screamed at her. I pushed her face away from me. As I held her back some, part of me was scared to hurt her, even as the hunger in her eyes intensified. The muscles in her neck tensed as she bit down into the soft flesh of my arm. I screamed, shoving her again. Adrenaline rushing through me, there was more strength behind it this time. I managed to throw her off me and she tumbled. "Edith, I'm sorry." The smear of fluid around her looked like tar. I made it a step towards her, but the smile she gave sent me running. She lunged at my ankles as I sprinted but missed. I grabbed the axe as I headed upstairs. Reaching the summit, I knocked rapidly on the door to my room. "Open up, Jolene." "It's me." "Open the door." She was hesitant to let me in. Of course she was. I managed to convince Jolene, just as the smiling face of Edith emerged from the stairwell. Pushing through the opening, I slammed the door behind me. As soon as I did, Edith's voice began screaming from the other side. "Help, help," she wailed, banging what may have been her skull against the door. "Jolene." "It's me." Jolene was wide-eyed, looking between me and the door. "We have to let her in," she said, making a move towards it. No, I grabbed Jolene and pulled her back. "I don't understand what's going on." Jolene's eyes were tearing up. "What if she's in trouble, Bia? It's our job to look after her." Azriel was right, Edith said from outside. Her shouting had changed abruptly. Her voice now opted to a sweet little girl tone which sounded too young for a 15-year-old. "You look like you really could use some sleep." Azriel was right. "You look like you really could use some sleep." Azriel was right. "You look like you really could use some sleep." Jolene sunk to the floor, still staring at the door. "That isn't our sister." "It's not. What happened to her?" "I don't know," I said. "It's like she's been possessed." Jolene covered her face with her hands. She was sobbing. I didn't know what to say. My heart was beating so rapidly. It was hard to process what had just happened. I went to the window and peered down. There were figures, clearly moving around right outside on the lawn of the cabin. Their boots were already making new trails in the tall grass, though it was still light out. All of them carried torches. I waited to mention it to Jolene, who was still crying uncontrollably into her hands. "We both have bite marks now. Mine from Edith's teeth on my arm and Jolene's on her leg from the thing in the basement. I wonder now if Edith had a bite mark I never saw. And if that's what turned her, maybe it works the same as zombies in older shows. I guess we'll find out together. I'll definitely be watching Jolene more closely." We did our best to barricade the room before nightfall, as I mentioned. Jolene was laying passed out on the bed when I took a seat at the desk. As I neared the door, I heard Edith whispering numbers 2, 3, 17, 30, then repeated them. Enough times that they've begun to repeat themselves on their own in my head now. Edith fell quiet for some time. That changed at nightfall. "What's all this blood?" came her voice suddenly. Jolene instantly went pale. She sounded like herself. Somehow that was more horrifying than the previous girlish tone. Reaching over, I put my hand on Joelene's knee, trying to comfort her. "Bae," Edith called to me. "I don't know what's going on. Open the door, please. You were right about everything. I knew you were. I don't know why I said all that this morning. Why did I let those men into the house? Bea, can you hear me?" It went quiet as there was a creak from downstairs. "Bea, please," there was a heavy step. I heard it clear at the base of the stairs. "Move the desk." Joelaine was on her feet. Her sweaty fingers clung onto the rim as she struggled to move it. "Help me, Beatrice." I was hesitant to stand. We managed to pull the desk aside just in time to hear a pounding of feet as something heavy charged up the stairs. The impact of it shook the room as it hit the wall near the door. It was followed by a shrill scream. There was a grunt before a sloping, wet crunch which sent shivers down my back. Joelaine made a sobbing yell of shock. I had to fight her to keep the door shut. Sounds of the violent struggle continued outside. The screaming continued until an abrupt end. Joelaine collapsed once more into tears. I don't know what to do. I've been working it over in my mind for hours. If we had managed to open the door, would it really have been my sister in those final moments? Any advice would be appreciated. Good night, Beatrice.